Welcome to Practical Shamanism. I'm Katie Weatherup. I'm a former engineer with 20 years of experience working as a shamanic practitioner, and I hope to help you to connect to your personal power and magic and to support you in living a really good life that just keeps getting better. Thank you so much for joining me. This recording is actually one of the modules in my Right Livelihood program. However, I'm so passionate about the subject that I didn't want to restrict sharing the information just for the people who had the money and the inclination to join me inside the program. So I hope this helps you to have a better compass when it comes to deciding how to approach this whole working for a living business in a way that can be really functional and effective for earning the money that you need to earn, as well as feeling aligned with your soul purpose and with your core essence. I hope you enjoy it. So when it comes to this whole business of work, this trading our time and talent for money, one of the key frameworks or ways of looking at the problem and the challenge is to understand that it's not a scarcity problem, it's a sorting problem. And how much of a sorting problem it is highly variable for different people with different skill sets, with different access to the internet. There may be a really, really big sorting problem or a more modest sorting problem. But in most cases, it's not a scarcity problem. However, humanity generally looks at work as a scarcity problem. There are tremendous conversations that have this idea of scarcity. And I love this language of it's not a scarcity problem, it's a sorting problem. And some of you may recognize it comes from Alison Armstrong, and she's applying it to the dating world. And what she's recognizing is in hunter-gatherer times and even agricultural times, there weren't a ton of humans in any given segment of land. The land just didn't support that many people. We didn't have preservatives or electricity to keep our food cold, modern trucking and roadways to distribute things. So you were limited for most of human history by the population that could be supported on the land. And as such, there were just a really finite number of humans that you mostly got to play with. Sure, you could go be a trader on the Silk Road, but in general, most people really only had a handful of people that they dealt with. And of all the people in the community, maybe 200 people you knew in your whole life, only a handful of them would be single and available to make babies with you. And your ability to get the dude or the gal with the best DNA and the most viability determined whether your genetic legacy had been handed down. And so we have a lot of biological hardwiring to be very competitive. But the one thing we have in the world in abundance now is people. We have so many humans. So it's not a scarcity problem of not enough potential dates. Sure, if you live in a little tiny town, there may be, a little bit more scarcity, but even so, the vast majority of the population has access and engagement with far more human beings than our ancestors ever had. You may have more Facebook friends than your ancestors knew humans in their entire life. And if you have access to the internet, which presumably you do if you're listening to me speaking this, then you have access to other humans in this other way. And so with so very many humans on the planet, then how do you sort through? How do you sort for the right person to invest all of your energy in exploring relationship? And I would argue that we're in the same place with the job situation. How do you sort out of all these different ways that you could use your time and your talent that people will pay you money? And we've already really limited things to some degree because, there's everything that we could use our time and talent for. And I want you to pay attention to that circle being much bigger than the ways that people will pay you money for your time and talent, because the money intersection of that circle is important for livelihood. You have to dial in something that people will pay you money for. And yet, all of that territory of what you could do with your time and talent is valuable and important and precious. And for some people, it's about having something that people will pay them for, that they can do, that doesn't take away so much from their life that they don't have the space to explore all those other things that they love and they're engaged with and that are powerful. So you could look at this as a Venn diagram where you're looking at, what am I good at? And what will people pay me money for? And what do I love doing? And what does the world need? And when you dial something in where all of those come together, all those circles intersect, that's a really cool place to hang out with livelihood. And remember that sometimes we think that what the world needs is some grand vision, but I would actually argue that the world needs really good school teachers and mothers and engineers and software programmers, and there's just so much cool stuff that the world needs that people will pay you money for and that you're good at and that you would love to do. And dialing all of that in is really, really great. But I think it's also important to recognize that there are things that you love to do that you're not good at, and that's valuable. It's really valuable to be terrible at belly dance if you really love it and still do it anyway. People will probably not pay you money for it. You might not end up doing it in public, but you might. But recognizing the preciousness of that quadrant, as well as the preciousness of things that you do for the love of the engagement that are fulfilling and wonderful and don't create money. Because we have a society that's super biased toward value being associated with what people will pay for. And as somebody who adores the theater and adores the arts and knows that it's a lot of challenge for magnificently gifted actors and actresses to make enough money doing that, I just want to acknowledge that there isn't a value in the most innate sense. So big picture, you probably want your livelihood, if it doesn't happen to line up with places of things that people will readily pay you money for, that you have a big love, you probably want your livelihood to support you in being able to be deeply engaged in those other ways and not have them have to carry the burden of making you money. I absolutely adored Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, which I would highly recommend. She actually does the audiobook, so you can hear her talk. And she talks about, she's this magnificent writer, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, but she talks about being in service to her writing and never requiring that her writing support her economically to be worth the engagement. And there's a real beauty and power in that. So in this course, we're going to really focus in on what people will pay you money for that you would enjoy doing and are good at, because there's a lot of good stuff that happens if you can be in that intersection. However, I just want to note those other areas as being important and valuable and so essential to really weave in for the fullness of your life experience. And as someone who's an inspired entrepreneur, it's good that I have that intersection, but I confess that there are things that I love that I don't engage with because it's tricky to make a living doing shamanic work compared to engineering. Like I really did have free evenings and weekends when I was an engineer. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it's just a question to be with as you start to sort, like what falls into those quadrants. So a great place to start your journey is with a little bit of brainstorming of just things that you love and things that are good at, whether they make money or not. So starting to remind yourself of the fullness of your experience is a really great place to start, because surprisingly, sometimes we can use things that we love and things that we are good at in creative and unexpected ways to be successful in things. So you don't want to restrict your expression to things that people will pay you money for, but you also want to stay in relationship to the things that you love and the things that bring you joy and the things that you have skill and talent in. And it's worth knowing the things that you're good at that you don't particularly love, that for the greater good you'd be willing to use in a particular way. So, for example, audio editing is not my jam, not my favorite thing, but I'm willing to do it because I'm so passionate about being able to share this course with you. So there may be things that you're really good at, and it's just nice to keep track. It'll help you feel more confident when you're feeling depleted or tired, or you have some kind of a unkind reflection. So getting laid off or losing a job, like in the most essential way, being out of a bad relationship usually does you favors. But if you get dumped by someone who's a terrible person, it can be the gift that keeps on giving later, but in the moment it's going to feel kind of awful potentially. And, maybe you take a little bit of a hit in your self-esteem. So one of the ways to bolster this, because self-confidence is so important, is to have a list of things that you're good at, that people would pay you for, things you're good at just in general, things you love. It's a deeper self-knowledge, and taking the time to brainstorm that list just gives you this deeper relationship to yourself that can be really powerful. And if you get stuck on this is a great time to call in a trusted friend and ask for some reflections. What am I good at? What do you see that I have talent in? A very generous way to go about this is to brainstorm a list of things you appreciate about the other person before you ask the question. So if you're like, wow, I really admire this and this and this about you, and I notice I'm having trouble feeling like I know where my strengths and my talents are, I wonder if you'd be willing to reflect some of the things that you see in me. And you may find that the things that you most appreciate in other people are hidden potentials, things that you haven't developed. So things that I really resonate and appreciate in other people are often actualizations in some, not a direct mirror, but something that lives inside of me that would enjoy having a freer, fuller, more actualized expression. So this can be a great way to build relationship with people if you get stuck. And it's not really an either or. You can do some brainstorming. And if you're really stuck, if you don't have really supportive relationships, a good therapist, this is part of what they can really do, is know you well and reflect back your gifts and talents and your strengths and where you're effectively engaging in the world, as well as facilitating any, Achilles heel you might have or something that could use a little more work or attention. So starting off by having this sort of deeper knowing, and then keeping the list somewhere. So those times when you feel like, we all have different levels. I've been in and out of the dating game for a long time, and there are times when I feel really attractive and desired, and there are times when I get some weird reflections because, online dating, you meet some weird people, and the reflections can be really bizarre and unpleasant. And one of the things I cultivate for being in the dating game is a core of strength that allows me to ride out those strange reflections. And the workplace can do something really similar. You can be mirrored back in bad ways, inaccurate ways, distorted ways, based on the issues of the people there, or if the job's just a bad match. It's perfectly possible to have two really good people in a relationship who are a terrible match. I have some friends, and the gal just really likes a lot of engagement and attention. And for a while, she was dating this lovely man who was just not available for that. And then she dated someone in our social circle who absolutely is. And she's friends with the original guy. We all hang out. But she's so much happier because she likes to have a lot of attention. She pays a lot of attention. And her partner now is extremely aligned with that. And so it's a very needs met in experience. And so sometimes jobs are innately toxic and awful, and sometimes they're just a bad match or a bad fit. But it's likely that if you're not deeply satisfied with livelihood, there'll be times when you're mirrored back in a way that doesn't feel very good. You get some feedback that doesn't feel very good. You end up losing a job, something doesn't work out, and you'll maybe not be at the height of your confidence. So that's where proactively, when we're not super triggered, when we're not super activated, having this information where you started to flesh out all of your abilities and talents and what you're good at is super supportive. And we're going to go deeper into that. But a summary of this, like do the journal work, but then a summary of this is just a good thing to keep where you can access it. So the next time you are in a position of needing to look for another job, you can bolster your self-esteem. And it's great to have things roll trippingly off the tongue if you're in a job interview situation. When somebody says, like, what can you bring to the team? Being able to put words to that is super, super helpful. And this will get you rocking and rolling on that, because being able to obtain a job and have people want to hire you if you're working for somebody else is a super good talent. And if you're working for someone else in the meantime, before you develop whatever it is that you might want to create, if you're drawn to, creating your own business, it's kind of a long haul usually to be profitable. So there's usually something in the meantime. So having the most graceful, supportive, aligned, well-paying, non-depleting job in the meantime that gives you the most happiness and the most energy left over at the end of the day to work on something that requires going back to school or requires building a business is a super smart move. So whether you're looking to transition or whether you're looking to, stay in somebody else paying you, and there are pros and cons to both, we want to set you up for success right away. So this is a great place to get started. Thank you so much for joining me. To learn more about me and my work, please visit my website at handsoverheart.com. There you can join my mailing list for access to free bonus content in the members-only area. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. It would help me out a lot. Also, a special thank you to my patrons for your support. You offer me the time freedom to work on passion projects like this one. If you'd like to receive personal shamanic support from me and my team of guides, please consider joining my Patreon community. You'll find the link below. And again, thank you so much for listening. This is Katie Weatherup, wishing you wholeness and happiness.